Part 1. Before the world was watching. Before Facebook connected billions of people, there was a quiet boy sitting in front of a computer screen, not knowing that his curiosity would one day change how the world talks, shares, and remembers. This story does not begin with success. It begins with silence, with questions, with long nights and glowing screens. And if you stay with this story, you may notice something gentle happening: how big ideas often grow quietly, before anyone notices. Mark Zuckerberg was born in 1984 in a small town in New York. His home was not famous. His family was not rich or powerful. It was a normal house, with normal days, and a calm environment where learning was encouraged. His father was a dentist. His mother worked in psychology. They believed in education, curiosity, and focus. There was no pressure to be special, no push to become famous, just space to learn. From a young age, Mark showed interest in patterns and logic. He enjoyed puzzles. He liked understanding how things worked. When other children played outside for hours, Mark often stayed inside, exploring ideas on a computer. Computers were not popular back then. They were slow, loud, and simple compared to today. But to Mark, they felt alive. They responded to logic. They made sense. At around 12 years old, Mark created a basic messaging program for his family. It allowed them to send messages to each other inside the house. It was not perfect. It was not impressive to the world, but it solved a problem. That was important. Mark did not build things to show off. He built things to fix something, even if the problem was small. As the years passed, his interest in programming grew deeper. Coding became a language for him. It was how he expressed ideas. While others wrote stories with words, Mark wrote stories with code. In school, he was known as smart but quiet. He was not the center of attention. He didn't try to be. He preferred working alone, focusing deeply, losing track of time. There were nights when he would code for hours without noticing how late it was. Not because he was forced, but because he was curious. Curiosity can be powerful when it is quiet and steady. Eventually, Mark was accepted into Harvard University. Harvard, a place filled with ambition, history, and expectation. For many students, Harvard was the final goal. For Mark, it was a new beginning. When he arrived, he noticed something interesting. Thousands of students lived close together, yet many felt disconnected. Everyone was busy. Everyone was focused on their own future. There were names, faces, and stories everywhere, but no simple way to connect them. Mark noticed this, but he didn't talk much about it. He observed. He thought. He waited. Then one night, in his dorm room, he opened his laptop and started working on a small idea. Just an idea. A website where students could see basic information about each other. Names, photos, simple profiles. Nothing complicated. He wasn't thinking about changing the world. He wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about connection. He called it Facebook. At first, it was only for Harvard students. It spread quietly, like a whisper, moving from room to room. Students talked about it in hallways. They shared it with friends. Usage grew faster than Mark expected. He stayed up late fixing bugs, adding features, responding to feedback. His days became short. His nights became long. And still, the world outside didn't notice. That's how many important things begin. Quietly. But not everyone was happy. Some people questioned where the idea came from. Some felt angry. Others felt ignored. Conflict appeared earlier than Mark expected. He was young, inexperienced, and suddenly facing pressure. He made mistakes. He learned lessons. Some lessons were uncomfortable, but he didn't stop building. That is something many people don't talk about, how growth often comes with confusion before clarity. As Facebook continued to grow inside Harvard, Mark faced a choice: stay safe or follow the idea. He chose the idea. He left Harvard, knowing he could always return, but the moment might not wait. That decision did not feel dramatic at the time. It felt uncertain, risky, quiet. There were no applause, no celebration, just movement forward. And this is where many people stop understanding the story. They see success at the end, but not the silence at the beginning. If you're watching this story and it feels calm, slow, and thoughtful, that's intentional, because real journeys don't rush. they unfold. And if stories like this help you slow down, reflect, and see ideas differently, you might enjoy what comes next. So before part 2 begins, where the world starts paying attention, take a moment. If you like quiet stories about big ideas and the people behind them, consider subscribing and staying with this journey. There's much more ahead, and the most interesting parts are still coming. Part 2. When the quiet began to grow. Some ideas grow slowly, others grow quietly, and then all at once. When Mark Zuckerberg left Harvard, there was no guarantee waiting for him, no clear path. Just a belief that the idea he was building deserved more time, more focus, and more space to grow. He moved to California, to a place called Silicon Valley. It was different from Harvard, less tradition, more risk, more people chasing ideas that might fail. For Mark, it felt right. He rented a small house with a few friends who believed in the project. The house became more than a home, it became an office. Laptops everywhere, whiteboards with ideas, long nights that turned into early mornings. Facebook was no longer just a student website. It was becoming something bigger, though no one knew how big. Mark's routine was simple: wake up, code, fix problems, improve the product, sleep for a few hours, then repeat. He didn't spend much time thinking about the future. He focused on the present, on making Facebook work better, faster, and simpler. Users were joining quickly. First students, then people outside universities, then people from different countries. Connection was spreading, but growth brought pressure. As Facebook expanded, more people paid attention, not all of them friendly. Investors wanted influence, critics wanted answers, former partners wanted credit. Mark was still very young. Suddenly, he was sitting in rooms with experienced business leaders, lawyers, and investors. Many spoke louder than him. Many wanted control. Mark listened more than he spoke. Some people misunderstood his silence. They thought he was unsure, but in reality, he was focused. He knew what mattered to him. The product mattered. The idea mattered. Connection mattered. Money came later. Facebook received investment. Big numbers appeared in headlines. Mark became one of the youngest billionaires in the world almost overnight. But his lifestyle didn't change much. He still wore simple clothes. He still focused on code. He still preferred building over celebrating. This confused many people. Why wasn't he enjoying success the way others did? The truth was simple. Mark didn't see Facebook as finished. To him, it was still a work in progress. As more users joined, new problems appeared. Privacy concerns, data questions, responsibility. People trusted Facebook with their memories, conversations, and lives. That trust was heavy. Mistakes were made. Some features caused harm. Some decisions were rushed. Mark later admitted that he didn't fully understand the power of what he was building at first. Growth can be blinding, and learning in public is not easy. Mark began to realize that Facebook was no longer just a product, it was a platform that influenced how people thought, felt, and connected. That realization changed him. He started speaking more publicly. He faced difficult interviews. He answered hard questions in front of governments and audiences around the world. Some people criticized him strongly, others defended him. Opinions became divided. But behind all the noise, one thing remained true. Mark kept working, not perfectly, not without mistakes, but consistently. As years passed, Facebook became Meta. The vision expanded beyond social media toward virtual reality, digital spaces, and the future of communication. Many people questioned these decisions. Some still do. But questioning is part of progress. Mark's story was never about being liked by everyone. It was about building something meaningful and continuing to learn while doing it. In quieter moments, away from headlines, Mark spoke about responsibility, long-term thinking, and building for the future, not just for today. He and his wife committed large parts of their wealth to education, science, and health. They spoke about using success to create opportunity, not because it looked good, but because it felt necessary. And here's something important that often gets missed. Mark Zuckerberg did not start as a leader. He became one over time. Leadership came from listening, from failing, from adjusting, from staying present even when things became uncomfortable. If you are watching this and thinking your journey feels slow, uncertain, or quiet, that doesn't mean it's wrong. Many important paths look that way from the inside. This story is not finished. Not for Mark, not for the platforms he's building, and not for anyone who is still learning. If you've stayed with this story so far, you're already part of that quiet patience it talks about. And if stories like this slow, thoughtful, and honest help you reflect and stay curious, you may want to subscribe and continue with the next part. Because what comes next is not about success. It's about responsibility, change, and what happens when the whole world is watching. Part 3. When the world started watching. There is a moment in every journey when silence disappears. For Mark Zuckerberg, that moment came when Facebook was no longer just a company, it became a global force. Millions of people were using it every day. Then millions became billions. And suddenly, the whole world was watching. At first, the attention felt unreal. Headlines spoke about growth, power, and influence. Facebook was not just connecting friends anymore, it was shaping conversations, news, and opinions. Mark was still the same person who liked building quietly, but the world around him had changed. Every decision now mattered. Small changes affected millions of lives. A single update could influence how people saw the world, and with that influence came questions, hard ones. People began asking about privacy, about data, about responsibility. Governments wanted answers. Journalists wanted explanations. Users wanted trust. Mark found himself in places he never imagined, sitting in government buildings, answering questions under bright lights, with cameras watching every movement. He was calm, but the pressure was heavy. Many people judged him quickly. Some said he was too powerful. Others said he was not doing enough. Some said he moved too fast. Others said he moved too slowly. There was no way to please everyone. And that is something Mark had to learn. Behind the scenes, Facebook was dealing with problems that didn't have easy solutions. Fake news, misinformation, harmful content, political influence. These were not problems code alone could fix. Mark began to understand that technology reflects humanity, and humanity is complex. Mistakes were made. Some were public, some were painful. Mark spoke openly about this later. He admitted that he didn't always see the full impact of Facebook's growth. He said he was learning, still learning. Not many people talk about how difficult it is to learn while the world is judging you. Growth under pressure is not gentle. Yet Mark continued to show up. He testified before governments. He listened to experts. He invested in safety teams, researchers, and new systems. Progress was slow. Criticism remained, but giving up was never an option. In quieter moments, Mark talked about long-term thinking, about building for decades, not months, about responsibility being part of innovation. He wasn't trying to escape criticism, he was trying to grow through it. During this time, his personal life became more important to him. He spoke about family, balance, and perspective. Success no longer felt like achievement, it felt like duty. Mark and his wife focused more on giving back. Education, health, science. They believed that wealth should help solve real problems. Not perfectly, not loudly, but intentionally. Meanwhile, Facebook evolved. It became Meta, a company focused on the future of digital connection, virtual reality, shared spaces, new ways for people to interact. Again, the world questioned the direction. Is this necessary? Is this safe? Is this too much power? Mark listened. He always listened. Some ideas succeeded. Some failed. That is part of building anything meaningful. And here is something important to notice. Mark Zuckerberg did not stop being curious. Even under pressure, even under criticism, even when success had already arrived. Curiosity kept him moving. Many people think success is the end of the story, but often, it's the most complicated part. Because once you reach the top, there is nowhere to hide. Your values are tested. Your patience is tested. Your purpose is tested. Mark's journey shows that growth doesn't stop when you become successful, it becomes more demanding. If you are watching this story and feeling calm rather than excited, that is intentional. Because real impact is not always dramatic. Sometimes, it is quiet responsibility. Sometimes, it is choosing to stay present when walking away would be easier. And if you've stayed with this story until now, you understand something important. This is not just a story about Mark Zuckerberg. It's about what happens when ideas grow larger than the person who started them. If stories like this help you think more deeply, slow down, and see success in a different way, you might want to subscribe and continue this journey. Because in the next part, the story turns inward toward reflection, legacy, and what remains when the noise fades. Part 4. Looking beyond the noise. After years of growth, criticism, and global attention, something changed inside Mark Zuckerberg. The noise never stopped, but he learned not to live inside it. When the cameras turned off and the meetings ended, Mark spent more time thinking about long-term impact. Not headlines, not numbers, but meaning. What does it mean to connect people responsibly? What kind of future are we building? And what will remain when trends fade? These were not questions with fast answers. Mark began speaking more openly about patience, about building things that might not make sense today but could matter tomorrow. This way of thinking confused many people. Why invest in ideas that may take years to work? Why focus on slow progress in a fast world? But Mark had always been comfortable moving slowly. He believed that real change needs time. Meta's vision expanded beyond screens and apps. It moved toward immersive digital spaces, virtual worlds where people could meet, work, and create together. Some people were excited, others were skeptical. Mark understood both reactions. He had learned that every new idea feels uncomfortable at first. He remembered how Facebook itself was doubted in the beginning. Still, he listened. Feedback mattered to him. Criticism mattered too. Not because he wanted approval, but because ignoring voices leads to blind spots. As Meta grew, Mark focused more on leadership than coding. This was not easy for him. Building with hands felt simpler than leading through words. But leadership required a different kind of attention. Listening deeply, deciding carefully, accepting responsibility. Mark often spoke about mistakes not as failures, but as signals, signs that adjustment was needed. In private moments, he talked about balance, about family, about learning to step away from constant urgency. Success had once meant growth. Now, it meant sustainability. He wanted to build systems that could last, not just impress. Through his philanthropy, Mark invested in science, health, and education. These were long-term commitments, not quick solutions. He understood something important. Technology alone cannot fix human problems. It can help, but only when guided by values. This realization did not come early in his journey. It came after pressure, mistakes, and reflection. Growth shaped him. Many people still see Mark Zuckerberg as a symbol of power, of technology, of influence. But behind the symbol is a person still learning, still adjusting. And that is what makes his story human. Not perfection, not certainty, but effort. As the world continued to change, Mark's focus remained steady. Build responsibly, think long-term, and stay curious. He did not try to control how people saw him. He focused on what he could control: his actions. And here is a quiet truth worth noticing. Most of life is lived away from attention. The moments that shape us happen in reflection, not reaction. Mark's journey reminds us that growth does not end when success arrives. It deepens. If you are watching this story and feeling reflective, that is not accidental. Stories like this are not meant to rush you. They are meant to sit with you. And if this way of storytelling, calm, thoughtful, and patient, helps you see success differently, you may want to subscribe and stay with the final part. Because the end of this story is not about achievement. It's about legacy. Part 5. What remains after the story? Every long journey eventually becomes quiet again. After the headlines fade, after opinions move on, after the world finds something new to talk about, what remains is not noise, but impact. For Mark Zuckerberg, this stage of life is not about proving anything. It is about reflection, about asking what truly lasts. When people speak about Mark today, they often mention power, technology, or influence, but those words only describe the surface. Beneath them is a story about a person who followed curiosity, stayed focused, and learned slowly, sometimes painfully, what responsibility means. Mark never planned to become a symbol. He never set out to shape global conversations. He started with a simple question: how can people connect more easily? That question grew larger than he ever imagined. As years passed, Mark learned that connection is not always positive. It can unite, but it can also divide. It can heal, but it can also harm. Understanding this changed how he saw his work. Legacy is not built by intention alone. It is shaped by consequences. Mark began thinking more about the future than the present. Not just the next update, but the next generation. Just what technology can do, but what it should do. This kind of thinking requires humility. It means accepting that no single person has all the answers. It means building systems that can adapt, improve, and correct themselves over time. Mark often spoke about patience, something rare in a fast-moving world. He believed that meaningful progress cannot be rushed, that lasting change is usually slow, uncomfortable, and uncertain. In many ways, he returned to who he had always been, a quiet builder, focused on learning. His story reminds us of something important. Success does not freeze us in one moment. It keeps asking us to grow. Mark Zuckerberg's life is not a straight line from idea to achievement. It is a curve filled with doubt, growth, responsibility, and reflection. And that makes it real. Some people will always judge his choices. Others will admire his impact. Both are part of the story, but the deeper lesson lies elsewhere. It lies in how small ideas can grow beyond us, in how curiosity can become responsibility, in how leadership is something we grow into, not something we are born with. When the story ends, what matters is not how loudly it was told, but how honestly it was lived. And maybe that is the quiet lesson here, that you don't need to have everything figured out to begin, that learning never truly ends, and that even the biggest stories start with one person paying attention to a simple idea. If you've stayed with this story from the beginning, thank you for giving it your time. Stories like this are meant to be experienced slowly, not rushed. And if you enjoy calm, thoughtful stories about people, ideas, and the paths they take, consider subscribing and staying with this space. More stories are waiting quietly, just like this one.